Is career mentorship important?
Yes, indeed. That is the topic that we are going to be covering today. And it is the We Are Career Show with Chris and Sabiha. Now, Sabiha, that is a topic that I have to say, I kind of feel like I might be somewhat familiar with, but, I'm interested to learn a little bit more. How are you kind of feeling about this topic today?
Oh, well, I have been talking about this over the last couple of months, so it's very timely for me. But I'm really curious as well for our viewers and our listeners. Where do you sit on this debate? And we have got an amazing guest to help us unpick this topic. So let's dive in. A very warm welcome to the show for our viewers and listeners. And if you're not familiar with the show, then please make sure that you hit the subscribe button on whatever platform that you are joining us from today. It really does make a difference. And of course, always engage with us. We're always happy to hear your thoughts and views. Now, we have a guest that has come all the way from India. Don't you just love technology that allows us to be global? And Saurabh Nanda is going to introduce himself because he has a very interesting career story of his own. So, Saurabh, tell us a little bit about your career journey and your background and what has led you to do the work that you are currently doing right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Meet, for that nice introduction. And it's such a wonderful experience to, finally meet both of you and talk to Meet and Chris at this wonderful podcast, which I stumbled upon. And I was like, yes, this is something that I really need to be a part of. So thank you so much for having me here. And well, um, career mentorship is definitely going to be the important thing in a lot of students' lives, and this is something that I realized um, when I was a student. Actually, everyone told me that you perform well in academics, and then you don't have to do a lot of stuff in your life. Everything else will be taken care of. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a good deal. So I just need to put my head down, study, and the rest of the time I can just play around, right? I can just go play sports and stuff like that. And what happened was I did that, but every single class that I completed, every time there was a career decision that I had to make, which I had no idea about as to how to make this career decision, how to go about it, how to choose which subjects to go for. Should I go for engineering? Why should I go for engineering? And all those questions. Um, but then that is what led me on to this questioning journey, I would say. So I finished my engineering because, well, every Indian does computer science engineering. So that's what I did it. Then the next step was, okay, you work for an American company. So that's what I did. I worked for an American company, and I was like, fine, let's go to the US. Why not? But then that didn't happen, and I was like, okay, this is it. I worked in this industry for 2.5 years. I don't enjoy it particularly. I'm not bad at it. I do good work, but I don't enjoy it, and there's something fundamentally wrong. And if this is happening with me, then there are millions of other students across India. This is happening too, and I never got the right guidance, even though my parents provided all the avenues and all the facilities that were available to somebody like me. But still, the guidance was not there, and that's when I decided to leave my IT job, pursue a master's in psychology, understand psychometric assessments, and get into career mentorship. Let me just put the problem in a bigger context here. 80% of all engineers in India don't work in engineering. Around 60% of architects, after completing their architecture degree, are not working as architects. A lot of dentists, they switch over to MBA so that they can move away from the field of being a dental surgeon or whatever. Most students, around 90%, and it's more than 90% actually, around 90% of school students in India only know about 7 career options. And when we're talking about India, then the numbers just shoot up. They just become crazy number of hundreds of millions, and that is the big problem. And that is why career mentorship is important. That is the reason one of the reasons why the productivity of a company or a country will be determined based on your career decisions. And if you don't have the right guidance, the productivity will be low. That is why there's a lot of shift in careers. That's why we have our own version of quarter life crisis and midlife crisis, because what we wanted to do and what we were probably pushed to do, or or herd
Yeah.
mentality, whatever, That just doesn't go together.
Well, no, and as you say, it's not just about having support, is it? But the right type of support, because as you say, you can have a supportive setting, environment around you, family. You can kind of have supportive structures within academia, but ultimately, if you've not engaged in that kind of career thinking, this is why people end up on slightly kind of different tracks to sometimes what they expected. And I suppose it's, as you said, being able to work out, if I end up on that different track, do I have an idea of the direction of travel that I want to go in, and how do I do that? So I feel, Saurabh, you've kind of sort of answered our opening question in a way, which is great. You've clearly made the case that career mentorship is important. But I guess from the sort of perspective of maybe people who are less familiar with the idea of say, career mentorship as a concept, what does that look like for you in your experience, and what makes you so passionate about it, I guess?
So that's an amazing question, actually. And just before this, as I was sharing with you guys, I was on a panel discussion earlier, and there was a talk about with changing technology, how with so much automation going on, what is the future of jobs and everything. And the question came back to the fact that the world is changing, technology is changing, but we are still human beings. We need those 8-10 years. We need those 10,000 hours to become experts in something before we can really start enjoying, maybe, or developing a lot of wealth around it, and so on and so forth. And career mentorship starts from there. You need to understand yourself first. And this particular field of research, career decision making, has been there for, I think, since 1906 or something. It's more than 100 years old now. So when I started off, my first job was my first aim was as a career mentor, just to give the right information to people, because I assumed that people will be able to use that information to make informed decisions. But hey, that doesn't work. So it's just not about making people aware or giving them information and waiting for them to choose on their own, right? What good decision is. Then I started understanding, okay, fine, it depends a lot on your natural abilities, talents, skills, personalities, the influences around you, your family, that special uncle in India who decides your career, right? It depends on a lot of those things as well. And then that's what we started to do. So we started to do a lot of psychometric assessments. We would give very contextualized information to South Asian audiences. This is who you are, these are your aptitudes, and so on. For example, I mean, just a bit of trivia. Indians are big visual learners. We understand things visually much more than we comprehend by reading language. So that's just something which is called an ecological intelligence. Actually, you belong to a particular ecology, so there's intelligence over there. So we did all that, and then we realized we've done a very good counseling session with somebody, and we are very happy that yes, we created some change, we brought in some impact to somebody's life. But hey, 6 months down the line, when we follow up, they're still listening to that special Indian uncle who who was telling them to do something else. And that's when we realized, okay, so what happened? Where did we miss out? Because there were more challenges. You had to repeat the message again and again. You had to explain the same message again and again, that why should you be a marine engineer instead of a landscape artist, right? We had to repeat that message again and again. And on top of that, you also had to tell them how to achieve success in that direction. So, okay, now I need to be a landscape artist, for example, right? Meet and I, we were discussing the other day. And if you want to be a landscape artist, then how do you get there? Which is the best possible way to get there? What are the right education opportunities, skill development opportunities? How do you present yourself? How do you develop a portfolio? Which networking events should you go for? Where should you exhibit your work? Should you use social media? Should you go on exhibitions, or should you just maybe do something else altogether? So because of this career decision making process, after around 10 years, I was able to come up with my career decision making theory, which I call spheres of understanding, and is copyrighted now in India and the US. And the last career decision making theory came out in 2016, which involves understand what's outside. So then you manage what's information is available outside. You learn how to manage that and see what is relevant for you or not. Understand yourself, so that you can relate the external information. So AI is everywhere. Should I be involved in AI? Is AI good for me? You should be able to decide that. And third is, let's say you do decide, okay, I am good for AI, I should go for that. How to get there, right? So that is the third sphere of understanding. And then what we have seen in our research is by the time you're in your late 30s and early 40s, what happens is suddenly you stop caring about the world, and you've done this process, external information, my information, and mapping opportunities. You've done this enough number of times, your bachelor's, your master's, your job negotiation, and so forth. You've spent enough number of times doing this decision making, you become an expert, and you stop caring about the world. You know exactly what not to do. You know what kind of new challenges. It can be entrepreneurship, it can be managing big teams, it can be running a new podcast on top of whatever you're doing. You start taking those adventures, you start taking those extra decisions, and you're absolutely comfortable about it. You're not you don't really care a lot about the wealth that you're creating, because you know it will come. So you reach that place, and that is the final sphere of understanding, which I call the gift. So when you reach the gift sphere of understanding, it's a gift that you give yourself, because then you're at peace with your career decisions. You're absolutely okay with what you're doing. You can explain to that uncle of yours, you know what, I'm not going to do what you're asking me. I know you have good intentions, but you know what, I found my place, and this is what I'm going to do. So long answer, sorry for that, but I hope it makes sense.
No, it really did. Oh my God. And by the way, right, as someone who's got Indian heritage, that little bit of trivia kind of really was like, oh my God, yeah, I am a visual learner. I always absorb more information. So there you go. Who knew grandfather's genetics, grandparents' genetics was playing a part in the way that I'm learning and manifesting my career? And then you talk there about, the research. I know that you are heavily steeped in research and a huge advocate. So you've given us a, pretty clear rationale for why you believe it's beneficial to have career mentorship. So I want to dive now a little bit into the how part, because there'll be viewers here that will be listening thinking, okay, Saurabh, I'm on board. I agree. Career mentorship is something that is important, and we as career professionals should be looking at this. How do we go about creatively? And I'd love to hear as well, what is India doing to solve this problem so that we can, professionals from across the globe can also learn from the good practice that is happening in India?
Right, of course. And so let me start again from something that I realized about myself. I wanted to solve a big problem, and working for an American company, making software for them was not the big problem that I wanted to solve. And this became my life's purpose, because the problem is so big that it keeps me intellectually engaged. And there are so many parts to it that it keeps me meeting new people, trying out new things. So everything that, the creativity, the variety of things, the diversity of problems, everything happens in this. That is my career choice. But what about other people? And that is why there's a mission that my current startup we are embarking on, and that is called Making India Career Mentorship Ready by 2030. That means creating systems, and those systems need to be at so many different places. It's amazing. Um, so let me approach this from the policy point of view, first of all. So if you look at different school curriculums, the international curriculum, whether it's Cambridge A levels or it's the international IB curriculum, right? They start asking students to make subject related decisions when they're in eighth grade. That is roughly 13 to 14 years of age. Psychometrically speaking, your natural abilities, your aptitudes, they get frozen by the age of 14, right? So when you say when should we ideally start, well, you can start at the age of 13, because now the school curriculum is aligned. They want students to be better prepared for making these decisions. Psychologically, we have tools which can very accurately understand your natural abilities. And by that time, we also see that a lot of, especially in today's world, I mean, everyone has seen adolescence, right? But taking the message apart from that, you've seen that that the kid was really mature by that age, right? So today's kids are much more mature at that age. So the personalities are quite well formed as well. So we can definitely assess them. Now that is one part of it. That is the assessment part. Um, the challenge with a country like India, which is just giant, is the student teacher ratio will not always be ideal. There will be many more students per class than there are teachers available. So the teachers will not be able to give in that special customized attention always, in order to understand what this student might need or might want to move into which direction, right? That is why assessments help a lot. That's the first part. The second part is, the government of India now has started recognizing this, especially actually that there was a new education policy which was floated around in 2020, and it has been now started. It has started implementing it in various places. It basically now allows people to become career counselors. So becoming a career counselor has now become a career in India. So around 7,000 odd career counselor jobs are available around the country right now in the first phase, and there will be hundreds of thousands more career counselors needed, which means that since the policy is in place now, um, people can actually move into schools wherein they can facilitate the career counseling, facilitate the career mentorship, which is needed. That is the second part of the puzzle. Who will facilitate this, right? And when? So they can be at that place at the right time. The third thing is nobody can understand everything. I mean, we talk about 250 odd career options, right? And like I know some portals, some websites that talk about 500, 600 career options. If you look at Holland's interest inventory, which is used in the US, it talks about hundreds of options. Nobody can know everything about everything. So there will be people who will be working in the different spheres of understanding, as I said. So there will be some people who will be very good at providing information. So there are these education websites in India and the world which provide information about careers, universities, colleges, courses, and everything. Then there will be people who will help you understand. There will be good psychometricians. There will be good counselors who will understand the psychometric assessment or do detailed counseling to understand your challenges and explain that. And then there will be people who will help you get to those places, like test prep companies and college application consultants and trainers and so on and so forth. So now all that is being put together in the form of regulation and policy. And finally, people have realized that there is standardization requirement, that everyone cannot just come in and with their own experience because their uncle said something, somebody else's uncle said something else. That experience might not be valuable for everyone. So there's standardization of processes which is happening. Again, very long answer. I hope it
No,
makes sense.
it's super interesting because I mean, I guess a lot of what you're kind of talking about there is the very stuff that we often talk about in the UK, which is that idea of what does good look like. And obviously, part of the challenge with that is, of course, there are a range of different opinions on what good career guidance or kind of careers information advice and guidance might actually look like. As you said, there's kind of myriad factors within there. There's that idea of actually, can we provide tools that help people maybe understand themselves a little bit better as they move through school and maybe make more informed choices? Do we have the professionals there who can kind of come in and provide that sort of either expert insight or the ability to help people work through their decision-making process, like the career counsellors that you mentioned? And obviously, do we have the structures in place, as you said, so there's some sort of consistency and some sort of kind of standardization? So it's really interesting to hear that kind of journey that India's sort of going on at the moment, which I guess some UK-based professionals or certainly English-based professionals might reflect has been, I guess, something we may have gone on since sort of 2015 with the Gatsby benchmark. Slightly different in the sense that there's always been systems kind of prior to that, but certainly this idea of maybe having kind of a national overarching framework that describes a little bit what good looks like, even if not everyone necessarily agrees with that. So I guess to kind of come back to you there, Saurabh, in terms of what good would look like as this is all being implemented, what I suppose is your sort of vision or your sort of desire then for that student coming in at 13, 14, how might that look different in the future if all of this stuff works the way that it's intended to work?
So yeah, I mean, my mentor, her name is Dr. Itishri Mishra. She's India's preeminent psychometrician. And after the pandemic began, India had one of the worst lockdowns in the world. So everyone was just, in their homes. So I started a podcast on careers, and I invited her over and I asked her, can you tell me what is the biggest problem with what we're doing, right? She said, you know what, we're trying to solve this big problem of career decision making. It's all good. It's all good. But just imagine, we are asking a 13-year-old child to decide for something that he or she or they might be doing for the next 50 years. Can you ask a 13-year-old person to make a decision for the next 50 years? I mean, just imagine the complexity of that. So when you say, thinking about that, you have to be extremely empathetic. You have to be extremely relevant so that they understand your language and you understand theirs. And at the end of the day, you need to have the pulse of the problems that they're facing on a daily basis. So a lot of the times students who come to us, or young people who come to us for career decision problems and everything, they have made career decisions based on watching something on Instagram. And and I'm like, my first question is, how long was the reel that you watched on Instagram? And they're like, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I said, okay, so in 45 seconds you saw something, and then you decided to do that thing. You're going to do that thing for the next 4 or 5 years. Do you think that's a very strong way of making a good decision, right? And then suddenly their critical thinking skills will start coming in. Okay, okay, yes. But then they ask another follow-up question. But I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and the reel came in, and it triggered me. And then I asked about the algorithm, and I'm like, do you know that the algorithm understood what you were thinking and threw the exact same thing that you wanted to see, because they understood what you were looking for? And that's the kind of discussion that we usually have, and that is when we are able to break through that barrier of them showing their vulnerable side, and being open to a conversation, being open to understanding different things. More than aptitudes, it's always about personality. I'll give you another trivia. Most Indian high school students have, we measure around 28 personality traits. So most Indian high school students that we have assessed, and this percentage is around 98%, have low achievement orientation. That means they have lack of clarity. That means that whatever they're doing, they're not really sure what it's going to lead to. If I'm doing this math assignment, or if I'm reading, World War II history, why am I doing this? What is it going to lead to? So they don't do it passionately. They don't do it with their full strength or motivation, and that's why they don't achieve enough. Their achievement orientation is low, and we've seen this consistently in students between the ages of 14 to 17.
It's so interesting you say that, Saurabh, because I work with a number of Indian students in my role at the university where I work, and I've seen a lot of that. I've seen a lot of people coming in to do postgraduate courses who will come to a careers appointment, and when we sort of talk through, oh, interesting, what brought you here? What made you decide to study this master's in this subject? There's sometimes that sense of disconnect. There's maybe a reason, like you said, could be family oriented, could be it's somewhat connected to my industry, but actually the real purpose behind it sometimes seems to be missing. And of course, that's a generalization, but really interesting to hear that there's some of the research you've done is kind of sort of tapping into that a little bit. And I guess links back to what you were saying, that idea of why kind of careers work, holistic careers work, is so important. It's about the whole person. And it's about, I guess, that mindset shift. It's not making one decision at one point in your life that will last forever. It's about how you make good decisions that are sustainable and that you might need to make again and again as you kind of move through your career. Sabiha, I'm really interested to hear your perspective here, because I know you've done a lot of work in India. You have a lot of clients who kind of come from India. What's sort of been your kind of take on all of this so far?
Oh my God, my brain is just like popping. Saurabh, I'm loving your trivia. I'm like, oh, another little fun fact. Viewers, are you also loving this trivia? And if you are, then definitely we'll talk at the end of towards the end of the show, how you can connect with Saurabh and learn more about the work that he is doing there. Yes, I mean, to come back, so many of the things that you're talking about, this idea of having understanding that yes, it's not a one stop, it's a process, is what essentially what you're saying, that this isn't a one stop shop. You don't come, make a decision at 13 and then go. I mean, I wouldn't trust the 13-year-old version of me. I mean, what did she know at 13? Seriously. um and so she was a rebel without a cause, and would I allow her to sort of kind of make decisions now where I am now, at the age that I am? And no, but has she informed and paved the way for the things that I have done? Probably. So, and I think this is what we also are as professionals. What are we seeing in our clients so that we can serve them better? And that's one message that I'm taking, that what you're saying and why mentorship is important is that it's, as Chris put it, taking a holistic approach. Like, when you gave that example of, you'd done this amazing work with a group of people, 6 months down the line, you go back to check what progress they have made, and very little progress has been made. And and it's brave. And I think we have to recognize that as professionals, don't we? That yes, we can have these amazing sort of sessions or work pieces of work that we do, whatever that looks like for us as individual professionals, whether you're working in an educational setting, private sector, mature clients. But how do you create a long-term ripple effect? And that idea of you've got to have consistent checkpoints, and then understanding the barrier that they face at the point that they tried to move forward, whatever that was, to have then access, giving your clients an access to tools so that they can then utilize them. And you've mentioned there several tools. So I guess here's what I want to know next, and maybe our viewers want to know this next as well. So you've got us excited. We've understood the why. You've talked a little bit about how in India that you are approaching this and solving this in many different ways. What can someone individually, as a professional, if there was one action, one thing that they could do as a result of listening to you today, what would that, something that's easy to execute for a career professional, what would that look like?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. Um, First of all, let me just add a little bit to both your comments from there, right? Chris, when you talk to Indian students at the university, you see this happening a lot, right? And then because then you don't expect, somebody is 24, 25, maybe 30 years old, and there's still kind of that foundation level clarity is just not there, right? And that happens a lot because of lack of guidance at an early age. The other thing which happens is consistent guidance, as Meet was talking about, that you have to follow up. And so marketing time for me. My second copyright model is called Step Zero, wherein we follow up with a client for 2 years just to see how well they're implementing. So somebody who's listening to this podcast, trust me, guys, you need to be in touch with your clients on a longer term basis. I know it's not cost effective, but you need to develop a process around it. If you want, I can share my learnings with you. Please do connect, not a problem. In my 2 year journey with a client, we follow up first after a week, obviously, and then 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and then after 1 year, when we follow up again with whatever time you feel right, we then do something called recounseling, and we charge again for it. You know why? Because after 1 year, they are at a completely different space. They've had more experiences, they've had more knowledge, their decision making kind of moves away from what we had initially discussed. And we charge for that recounseling again. Why? Because they should also feel that, yes, something has changed and I need to pay a professional for it. And then you cover your costs as well. Somebody who's listening to this podcast needs to understand that this is a long term activity. And if you love working with people, then this is for you. By 2040, and this is something that I keep repeating, I'm an entrepreneur, I can say whatever I want, right? Anyway, so by 2040, this is what I assume, that half the world will be involved in some kind of mentorship, guys. I mean, just look at today. We have a mentor for nutrition, for yoga, for career decision making, for resume, for whatever, right? For legal advice, financial literacy, and so on. If automation is going to take away every other job, what are humans going to do? Humans are going to do what we are best at doing, building relationships, helping each other, guiding each other, taking the civilization forward, right? So if you are interested in doing this, if you love working with people, then you should start your journey today. And, by the time general purpose AI takes over, then you have a skill which is still in demand.
It's such an interesting point, though, about the idea of mentorship, and I guess kind of coaching sort of falls into this a little bit as well. And certainly, I think anyone who's kind of watching or sort of listening to this, who's been involved in career coaching and had those regular interventions with clients, obviously not possible in every setting. Some of us may only get to see kind of an individual once, but where we have had those multiple interventions, I think people would probably reflect exactly what you're saying, Saurabh, that you see that progression, you see the career thinking change, you kind of revisit things. It's a bad analogy, but it's similar. You get your mortgage renewed, every 3 years or 5 years. You're in a different situation. The world is different. Your personal situation is different. So there, your mortgage advisor will give you new advice, different advice, or help you work through your options in a different way. Very kind of bad analogy, but as you were saying, it's not a static process, is it? That idea of career thinking, it changes with the person, with their personality, with their situation, the environment around them, the ecology around them, and what's happening in the world. And so I think it's such a positive message around the importance of mentorship, but also, as you say, the fact that actually, as we kind of move forward, we don't know what the world of work will look like, but we do know that relationship building is a uniquely human activity and something that we all value. And certainly in the university sector, we are seeing more and more, despite all the digital first approaches that are out there, people value speaking to a person and sitting in front of a person and asking those questions. So really, really positive to hear your kind of reflection on that too. I guess if we've got any viewers or listeners who are watching or listening to the show and they want to find out more about your work or they want to get in touch with you, what's the best thing for them to do?
Oh, the best thing is LinkedIn and email. I am just not comfortable with Instagram. But I mean, I use it for entertainment. I love the memes. This is fantastic. The creativity is just awesome. But then, for professional purposes, I just can't do DMs. So LinkedIn messages, on the other hand, I can still do. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think I'm easily accessible over there. In fact, when my own team members, sometimes they don't get a response on my email, they message me on LinkedIn. Hey, we sent you an email. Please reply back. So probably LinkedIn will be the best way to reach out to me. And I do make content. So if you like what we have been discussing, it'll be really kind of you to follow me on YouTube. We're trying to create more useful content which is not something that other people are talking about. So we try to make those videos so nobody watches them. But hey, if you might face that problem, so you might find that useful. So that's how you can connect it.
And that's great. I love that. I was talking to somebody, a student, about that the other day, about that idea that actually, there is a lot of stuff out there that looks the same and might get more engagement, but ultimately, are you doing something that drives you or that you feel is going to differentiate, or is just going to be useful in a different way? So I think great that you kind of mentioned that.
It's Dear Diary stuff, isn't it? And it's sort of, there isn't really an audience, but you know that what you're creating, and maybe you'll be a Picasso. It'll be discovered in years to come, and at least then you put it out there. But you've got to try. I know you've got to try.
I appreciated in your own, or underappreciated in your own time, but appreciated further down the line. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is a lovely way to kind of draw us towards the end of the show. If you have been listening or watching to this and you've been interested in anything that Saurabh's been talking about, everything that we've kind of mentioned in terms of sort of the research that's been discussed, podcasts, Saurabh's content, his LinkedIn kind of contact details, all of that we will include in the YouTube description and the episode notes on Spotify. So check those out as always and have a look through those if you've been interested in anything that's come up as part of today's show. But all that really leads us to say is we are at the end of the show. Again, for a kind of another fortnight, hard to believe. A massive thank you to Saurabh for joining us today all the way from India. A huge thank you to all our viewers and listeners for tuning in. And we will see you in a fortnight's time in the Career Sphere for our next episode. Take care.